Here, have a seat. Mr. Cotter, I understand that you're not seeking a declaration or not taking an objection in relation to your evidence today?
That is correct, Commissioner.
And you've had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Smart about that decision?
Yes, I fully understand. Thank you.
Thank you. The other formality that I would ordinarily go through is to set out the scope and purpose of the examination, but it's the same as the scope and purpose that was attached to your summons. Have you had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
In that case, I might skip over reading that out for the benefit of everyone in the room, and we'll move straight to questions. But if you've got any questions about the scope and purpose of your examination, I'm happy to go through it with you.
No, I'm okay. No, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can we have your full name for the record?
Peter Cotter. Excuse me, Peter Cotter, C-O-T-T-E-R, Assistant Commissioner in New South Wales Police Force, and currently the Commander of the Professional Standards Command.
Thank you, sir. You were tested in 1984?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
All right.
13th of August, to be exact.
And we know you're into your 42nd year of policing. You have extensive experience as a criminal investigator, can I suggest?
Yes, thank you.
And you served as the commander of the robbery squad and the homicide squad in State Crime Command?
Yes.
What period was that, sir?
The robbery squad from the period of 2003 to 2009.
Yes?
And homicide squad 2010 and 2011.
Thank you.
2 years. 6 years and 2 years.
And that role is as a superintendent, is that right?
That's correct.
And you've also served as region commander in the Central Metropolitan Region.
Yes.
When was that?
That was for 3 months in the early part of 2022.
Thank you. And then also region commander of Southern Region.
That was from about April of 22 through to the January of 24 when I took over professional standards.
Professional standards, all right. And you've been in that role since January 2024, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, we'll come to your response, but you have started with what I will describe as a very genuine and touching acknowledgement. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like you to read that acknowledgement out for Miss Lucina's family.
So I have a copy here, Miss Sullivan.
Thank you, please.
It's titled Acknowledgement to Lindy Lucina. To the late Lindy Lucina, her family and friends, and specifically her daughter Tahini and sister Julie, my sincere and personal condolences and sympathy on this tragic loss of life at the hands of a violent man. May the suffering, pain and grief felt by so many upon the loss of Lindy, a loved mother, sister and companion, never be forgotten, and remind us all to always do our very best for those that are vulnerable and need our help.
Thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner. Now, back to more prosaic matters. You prepared a Section 54 response for the assistance of this Commission dated the 2nd of December 2025, and you also collated documents in response to a Section 55 notice.
Yes.
And that is also dated 2 December 2025.
Correct.
I tender that documentation, Commissioner. That is at tab 147 of the brief. It commences at barcode 8629638 and concludes, I should say that is at tab 147, 8629638 to 8629714.
So that will be Exhibit 31C.
Thank you. Now, Assistant Commissioner, can I just ask you to outline in very short form the mandate or purview of Professional Standards Command, please?
There's basically 3 arms to it. There's the world of prevention. So we're in that identifying trends around misconduct in the organisation and then strategising and getting consent from the executive of the New South Wales Police Force to put in place education, training, marketing, publications, screensavers, documents, a whole myriad of written material to educate the organisation on what misconduct is, how it's evolving perhaps, and obviously ways to prevent it and identify it. The second leg of the industry that we run is centred on investigation. So I have a whole investigative arm which does the high-end, sensitive, in the public purview type of, and complex type of investigations. So again, I have 10 teams of investigators, all led by an inspector with a superintendent over the top of that. And
Pausing there, those are the teams that undertake the critical incident investigations?
8 of them are. 2 of them you would say are not, because they're in the covert side of the world. So we carve out 2 for that type of work. And then the third arm of the business is centred around the back end, the industrial law side of it, determining suspensions, sanctions, getting parity in those type of worlds, presenting matters to the Industrial Relations Court where they're contested, and running panels to set, again, conformity and consistency around sanctions and penalty. And both the front end, so Arm 1 and Arm 3, are under the command of the superintendent as well.
Okay, thank you. Fair to say that one of the essential functions of, if I can call it PSC, is to provide advisory, consultancy and review services with respect to investigations, critical incidents and complaint management. Agree with that? And also to develop or contribute to reference materials, standard operating procedures, policies and trainings that support professional standards and the application of best practice.
Yes.
Right. And also PSC are an important contact point between the New South Wales Police Force and integrity bodies like this Commission.
Yes.
And ICAC?
Yes, mainly this wonderful establishment here.
And the Office of the
Flattery
State...
won't get you too far, Assistant Commissioner.
And the Office of the State Coroner.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. And in fact, accurate to describe PSC as subject matter experts in relation to critical incidents?
I think that's the corporate target for us, yes. I'll accept that.
And indeed, it's PSC who have corporate ownership of the critical incident guidelines.
Yes.
How frequently are those guidelines reviewed in your experience?
We were going through a review process literally over the last 12 months. However, I think we're going to have to pause that and no doubt add some things to that are flowing from my closer review in the last few days, I might say, and literally no doubt some recommendations that might follow from this hearing. But to answer that question specifically, and the cause of that most recent review was the 5-year review that the LEC had done into critical incidents.
Yes.
Prior to that, I think they were last updated in a technical or cosmetic sense around 2024, the January,
Yep.
and before that I think perhaps 2019. So it's not something that's reviewed every calendar. It's more when there's a significant body of work or a change in perhaps responsibility or change in terminology, or equally some significant moments of good or crisis which might determine us in a different direction.
Or deep reflection, as in this case?
Deep reflection.
As in this case.
As in this case.
Thank you. All right. Now, it's right, isn't it, that PSC only have a role where a critical incident is declared by a Region Commander?
That is correct.
Okay. And that is entirely within the Region Commander's discretion?
Yes.
So it's imperative that they have a clear understanding about the operation of the critical incident criterion?
Yes.
Where a critical incident is declared, can you just outline for us noting this is a public hearing and people may not have a good understanding of what the role of PSC is with respect to a critical incident investigation.
Overarching their role is to make sure that the things all the way from the beginning, from the scene, all the way through to the finality, through the coronial jurisdiction, and ultimately the completion of the final report, the final investigator's report, from cradle to grave, to use that term, beginning to end, that there is good communication between the Professional Standards Command, not in an investigative setting direction way, but certainly a communication way with the senior investigators, whether they be from homicide or whether they be from the field. Equally, to have be a conduit and relationship holder with the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission.
Yes.
And their monitoring officer and their capability. And to ensure that all the things in the correct chronology are done, give or take. There's no corners cut, that things are uploaded and documented and recorded. So there's a veil of independence, transparency and probity around the investigation.
Thank you. And the role of the review officer, who is central in those tasks, including in terms of the monitoring of integrity or probity concerns, is that right?
Yes.
That review officer also has a role in identifying any conflicts of interest.
Yes.
And ensuring that the quality and the probity of the investigation is of the highest standard.
Yes.
And managing the investigation having regard to public interest considerations, impartiality and transparency, is that right?
Yes.
And given your extensive experience, you were a police officer at the time that this commission commenced its work in 2016, as senior police officer, and you certainly understood the concerns that existed in the community prior to that point about police investigating police.
Yes.
And this commission provides a measure of oversight and addresses those public interest concerns. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
And indeed, a review officer has, can I suggest, a very important function in preparing a final report that identifies any deficiencies in a critical incident in terms of systems, policies and procedures.
Yes.
And that's not something that would otherwise be the mandate of a standard homicide investigation, is that right?
No.
The focus of a homicide investigation is on identifying the perpetrator, gathering the evidence and securing a successful prosecution.
Correct.
And can I suggest that the current model, which has that critical role of PSC combined with the Commission's oversight, provides protection to the New South Wales Police Force and involved officers in relation to a critical incident scenario. In this respect, it safeguards against assertions or perceptions of cover-up by the public. Do you agree with that?
I do.
All right. And the public can have confidence in that model because of the level of oversight provided by PSC and this Commission.
I agree.
Thank you. Are you aware of the notion of a DV homicide review as an independent review of police operations?
No, I can't talk to that, to be honest.
Not ever heard of that scenario of a DV homicide review?
I personally have not heard of that.
Okay. You've had an opportunity to familiarise yourself with the documents, key documents that relate to this inquiry, is that fair? Were you able to review a Godfrey memorandum that was prepared by Assistant Commissioner Chapman in relation to her role?
Yes, I have.
And you will have seen in that document, I can take you to it if it's not immediately front of mind, but her
It's
reference...
immediately front of mind.
Thank you.
She refers to a DV homicide review.
All right, and refers to that as a suitable process to review the police conduct during the relevant period up to the discovery of Miss Lucina's body?
Yes, she does.
Yes. But that's not a process you're familiar with?
It's not one I'm familiar with. Personally, it's not one I'm personally familiar with.
And have you ever heard of it in connection with a form of independent review within the New South Wales Police Force?
I've not heard of it, that term.
Can I suggest, and please feel free to disagree, but can I suggest in circumstances where there is consideration about the need for an independent review by police, that is a telling sign that one may be in the territory of a critical incident?
Sorry, could you ask that question again?
I can, and I can try and formulate it a bit better to save my friend. Perhaps let's just go to the memorandum, and we'll in fairness also to Assistant Commissioner Chapman. Could we pull up, please, the memorandum? I think it's tab 1111. What's the... yes. Thank you. Tab 1111, it is in evidence.
27C.
27C, thank you. If we could go, please, to barcode 890, the next page. It's the second paragraph that I was particularly referring to. I also requested that he, that is Superintendent Tanner, ensure the DV homicide review by State Crime Command include assessing all matters, including the lead up to locating the victim. On this basis, I was satisfied that there would be suitable independent review and any matters arising would be treated, if appropriate, under Part 8A of the Police Act. You see that?
Yes.
Can I suggest that, from your perspective as the Commander of PSC, when a region commander is looking for a process that requires independent review, that's the point when one should be considering, in particular, if we're not in the Section 1110 mandatory criterion for a critical incident, one would be very concerned about whether Section 111 1B might be operative, because as you see there, there's a need for an independent review. Do you agree? Thank you. To your mind, is it of concern that there is this independent review, this DV homicide review, almost operating as a substitute for a critical incident in this matter?
I don't understand the remit of a DV homicide review. As I've said, I don't know what one is. I've not heard of it. That might be ignorance on my part. So unless I know what that review mechanism is, I probably can't answer that. But I've not heard of a DV homicide review.
To the extent that it may be used as a substitute, whatever that process is, you would want to understand more about what the scope of such a review may entail, I understand.
Yes.
But on its face, can I suggest you might be troubled by matters being diverted down the DV homicide independent review pathway without PSC's involvement?
Object. The witness has already said he doesn't understand what the DV review is or its remit, so he can't actually make any statement of any coherence with respect to comparing it to something that he otherwise doesn't know about.
Well, I think with respect that's a fair objection. I said I think with respect that's a fair objection. In light of your qualification about the nature of a DV homicide review, and can I indicate to you that we're unclear about what the nature of that process is as well, so we were hoping that you might be in a position to elucidate us. But if it is the case Well, it's important for you, if I put it this way, it's important for you as the commander of PSC to understand if other processes are being used in substitute for a critical incident investigation. Agree?
Agree.
I got there.
Can I check Assistant Commissioner Cotter? This is a bit of a Dorothy Dixer, but just the Professional Standards Command, to your knowledge, doesn't have any oversight or review function in relation to a domestic violence homicide review?
Commissioner, no, we do not. We do not have any role into that DV, into homicide world per se, and certainly into the subset of DV homicide. Our view into the world and reach into the world of criminal investigation is essentially and specifically around critical incidents, other than the investigations we own, which are purely criminal, for example.
Criminal misconduct investigation, but that would be highly unusual for that to overlap with a homicide. I know it does from time to time, but highly unusual. But I'll withdraw that, yeah.
But to the extent that there's a reference to this independent review, you would expect that there would be documentation in relation to what that was?
As in policy or process around what a DV homicide review was. If there was such a process, yes, I would expect there to be some guidelines and at least some advice and structure around that.
And you see here that this matter, according to Assistant Commissioner Chapman's response, has been referred down the DV homicide review, independent review pathway. Given that, you would expect there to be some documentation in relation to the scope of what that review was, surely?
Yes, I would if it existed.
Yes.
I don't know whether it does or doesn't.
And nor do we. And similarly, you would anticipate that there might be a work product, some document that is generated as a function of that request for an independent review by the DV homicide team?
The witness has already said that he doesn't understand what this process is. So asking him about questions about the content of the process, what might be generated by reason of the process, it's not only unfair to the witness, but with respect, it gives rise to a high level of speculation that doesn't assist you. Now, it may be that through other witnesses, the Commission comes to a view about what it is or its content and can reconcile it within the parameters of the evidence. But this witness can't give any evidence in circumstances where he says, I don't understand the creature that I'm dealing with.
Well, as a matter of basic record keeping, one would anticipate in circumstances where there is an independent review being conducted, that some documentation might be generated. This experienced commander, as the head of PSC and the setting of standards within the organisation, may well have a view and an expectation about whether records ought to exist of any such review.
I think I'm comfortable with bearing on his experience of as a police officer of many years, Mr. Gollan, that if there was a review conducted, and I accept that Assistant Commissioner Cotter doesn't know what that review might mean, what might involve, would he expect there to be some record as a result of such a review? Because I'll tell you why I think it's useful to me, which is if there's no such record, does that mean that the review wasn't conducted? How else would I draw that conclusion?
With great respect, we haven't heard from any of the homicide officers.
We haven't heard from, sorry?
Any of the homicide officers, any of the investigating homicide police officers. And so what you're really being asked to accept is in the absence of evidence not called for or not properly understood by this witness to come to the conclusion that there is none. And that's not only unfair on the police that are involved, but it's also, with great respect, a naive approach of the Commission if it be that is a matter of inquiry, that's the kind of thing that could be sought out.
Well, I'm not aware of Mr. Gollan's instructions at this point, but inquiries were made, and it's my understanding he's been furnished with a document that relates to those inquiries.
Well, I don't have the brief, as
Well,
we've
it's
discussed
not the
earlier.
brief, it's
But
a very specific
the-
document that responds to that question.
The point is that this witness is not in a position to shed any light on those inquiries, given what he's already told you.
I'm happy for the question to be asked and answered. I think Mr. Cotter is experienced enough and senior enough to indicate the extent of his knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Gollan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Gollan. Ms. Sullivan, I would expect if there is such a structure around a review of this ilk, this importance, that there would be some outcome document which would be a record of the considerations and potentially the review process.
Thank you very much. We can move on. Just before we do that, can I just suggest, and you with your extensive knowledge will no doubt think of some other differences, but in terms of the critical incident investigation model, some of the benefits of that relative to a review process like this, whatever that may be, would include that officers are subject to mandatory drug and alcohol testing as part of a critical incident investigation?
Yes, they are.
And that can
under certain policy
under certain,
arrangements, yeah.
thank you. And that, of course, almost always tends to exonerate officers.
At least it indicates that they weren't under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
And it ensures, that is, the critical incident process ensures that officers are given quite specific directions about not speaking to other involved officers in connection with their evidence.
Yes.
And it also includes an emphasis on policies, procedures, systemic improvements that would not be the mandate, I think, as we canvassed, of an ordinary homicide investigation.
Correct.
What are the other benefits, to your knowledge, in terms of a critical incident declaration relative to a standard homicide investigation?
In the overarching sort of definition, again, we've touched on it in evidence. It ensures there is impartiality. It ensures that there is another body working alongside, as I said, not to provide, you should do that, should do this sort of thing. It's not about that. Although there can be some obviously helpful hints about follow the guidelines, follow the checklist, follow the procedures. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And again, I think especially for an inexperienced senior critical investigator, not necessarily a homicide one, doing a level category 1, but those that might be doing their first one or might be acting into an inspector's role, it is a good buffer and a good support as well. You know, the professional standards are here to support people as well professionally, not just catch them out or not gotcha moments. It's about supporting people for the greater good here, which is an investigation that we can all rely on and look back on in time and go, it's a fair representation, a reasonable outcome for whatever occurred that led to the incident, whether it be serious injury or whether it be death, and the actions of the police.
And independent from any sort of relevant command that may be involved?
Totally, we're totally independent.
All right, thank you. Now, can I ask you please about your experience as a ski? You, as a senior critical incident investigator, you've conducted many critical incident investigations yourself?
As a ski, I completed one very notable one in the year 2000, going back a long time. Very notable. Very notable.
Which one was that?
I ended up charging a police officer with murder in September of 2000. I'm not too sure where you want to take that. But
No, I don't want to take that anywhere, but that
so that gives you an idea of I suppose, what a critical incident can be.
Yes.
And so I'm well versed from that side of, and I know the impact that it had on me, not only as a professional and investigator, but also still today emotionally, as I refer to it, and dealing with that officer and the family of the person that we as an organisation shot and killed that night on the 5th of September 2000. And then the organisational pressure and impact that has in a ripple effect to this organisation. And then equally charging someone with murder, as I did. And then I go from there into, so that's my notable, personally notable. And I suppose the transparency and learning curve I got about this organisation, about the law, about a whole lot of things.
From that experience?
From that experience, yeah. It's probably one of the great leadership experiences for me personally on a whole lot of fronts, but that's not what we're here for. Obviously, in my 2 years at Homicide as the superintendent, I had, and that's where I think we first crossed paths, Ms. Sullivan, when you were at the Crown Souls. We had a number of critical incidents during 2010, 2011, and we had a number of level ones, which category ones, which awakened the homicide inspectors and the staff. And again, so not being the ski, but certainly being the supervisor of the ski on a number of them. And then I suppose my experience then goes into the region commander role in Southern Region, where during that time I declared 5 critical incidents in that 2-year period, 3 being level ones, the most notable being Claire Noland and her passing at the nursing home.
Yes.
And a couple of other very notable ones too. And so 3 level ones and 2 level twos. And then for my sins, I arrive at Professional Standards Command and I own the whole thing, apparently.
But fortunately, with a lot of experience, if I can suggest, in critical incident.
A lot of real experience and a lot of learned experience, and I say that with humility because my learnings around this are very humble. Let me assure you that these are tragic incidents for everyone in the organisation, the officers involved,
Yes.
and the impact it has emotionally and psychologically. It sends shockwaves everywhere, and that's not to take one iota away from the people that we've hurt in the course of our duties and who all suffered death.
That's a very real consideration for a region commander who is determining when a matter might be in a grey zone, that the welfare impost on staff is a key consideration that might tend against declaring and then later revoking, for example. Do you agree with that?
The welfare of our police is omnipresent. And I put that absolutely on the podium. But that has to be absolutely balanced, though, with the probity
Yes.
of an investigation.
Yes. And it's not in the interests of those involved officers to have public speculation about their role subsequently when a critical incident hasn't been declared and they don't get the protection that's provided by the model, as we've just discussed. Do you agree with that?
It's one of those catch-22s, I suppose, to be honest. But welfare has to be right up there. It has to be up there with probity. But if there has to be a winner, it has to be probity.
Why do you say that?
Because of the reputation of the whole process, the integrity of this organisation. We are 163 years old. We're the oldest company just about in Australia. And whilst all of us will come and go from this job, companies will come and go, I've little doubt this organisation will be still going in another 163 years. and for it to have its integrity intact is critical. But to balance that, we are not ever about throwing our soldiers into the line of fire unnecessarily. It is a really hard precipice sometimes to walk for region commanders. But if there has to be an err on any side of caution, it has to be for transparency, impartiality, probity and integrity.
Thank you very much. Now, you were provided with some material by way of homework in preparation for these proceedings.
Thank you for that.
And it included a bundle of media articles, that's so. You had an opportunity to familiarise yourself with those articles?
Yes, I've read one article. There was a whole list of articles. I didn't read them. Had a bit on over the weekend.
Understood.
But I have read certainly what was printed for me, and I read one article that certainly, Genesis was the ABC perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What struck you about that article in particular?
Well, it was a compare and contrast, I think, with if I've got the right article, if we're referring to the right one, around, again, another tragic domestic violence murder, of which I know that violent perpetrator has only been found guilty recently and is up for sentence on the 19th of December. So I think we've got...
The Dr. Toru...
Yes, the Tatiana, yes, from Liverpool case. So I'm generally conversant with that matter, and I think it was a compare and contrast around general domestic violence and then specifically that and the response of police and the contrast, whereas that was declared a critical incident, and for example this matter wasn't.
That's the media raising concerns about the apparent inconsistency in approach. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that as a general proposition, consistency in decision-making in terms of the declaration and non-declaration of critical incidents is desirable?
Absolutely, consistency is desirable, but with different humans,
Yes.
just as there's different legal opinion in this room and different opinion on the 7 learned judges of the High Court sometimes. Sometimes they agree for different reasons.
Yes.
Sometimes they agree for the same. Sometimes they disagree for totally different reasons, obviously. And then sometimes 5 years later, some of those decisions are a new law. So there is a lot of subjectivity into it,
Yes.
and I think that's what we aim for. We want diversity, but with diversity comes subjectivity and different experiences and different learnings. First day on the job versus, maybe day 100 on the job in a metaphorical way.
Pausing
But,
there, though,
but obviously we want consistency.
Thank you. Pausing there, that's where PSC can have a very important function in providing advice to inform region commanders, particularly who might be acting, about matters to consider in exercising that discretion as to whether to declare or not.
Well, there's 2 avenues there. A region commander equally has available to them a number of people. They're in a chain of command. They're not in my chain of command.
Yep.
They're not even in the Investigations and Counter-Terrorism Directorate, which is where I sit over here under a certain Deputy Commissioner. So in deciding, like any decision, it's mostly best populated by other opinions. They have available to them their professional standards manager, an inspector, who they work hand in glove with in the region office every day of the week, physically or at least remotely. They have available to them a deputy commissioner upwards to bounce ideas off and to seek that wisdom and that opinion and that experience. And they have the superintendent on the ground, the commander, who in a critical incident will be called out. Again, tyranny of distance can dictate, and the timing of it can dictate when that superintendent arrives, for example. But again, you would hope that the collective body of those people will thrash things out, will discuss it, will have real conversations around what has occurred. But equally, I'll qualify that by saying at any given point in time. And that's why I've said in my statement, it's important to talk early and talk often, because
You're
things
in
can
favour
change.
of
Because
those?
things can change.
That's right. You're in favour of those robust discussions between senior police to inform the best possible decision making?
I think it's a very wise course of action.
And it will only arise in relation to certain categories of critical incidents, won't it? Because they're often very clear-cut in terms of exhibiting the features in section 110.
Yes, generally, and the statistics will tell you that for the last 5 years on my research, your research going back to the commencement of this commission, 2017 or so, yeah, there's not a lot of grey. It either fits squarely into the 110 criteria,
Yes.
which is quite clear and quite plain English and quite obvious,
Yes.
or those words of in that public interest, which I think lawmakers, legislators, and lawyers have been arguing about for many, many years.
Protean term. Agreed.
So, yeah.
All right. So we'll come to the statistics in relation to that, but can I just suggest that consistency in decision making is entirely consistent with former Commissioner Scipione's critical incident policy statement, which you very helpfully set out in your response at 656, barcode 656.
Yes, it's in my papers. I refer to it in my statement. I can't remember what paragraph, but I can find it for you. But yeah, it's on reading that, and again, it's amazing the learnings that you get when you sit down to prepare for something like this, and that document is still alive and has substance to it today as it was when it was drafted by Mr. Scipione 8 or 9 years ago.
And in fairness to those that are
Sorry.
on the bar table, it might be helpful to get
Pull that up, thank you.
Pull that up.
It's worthy of being pulled up. It's an impressive statement. It's at 656 of
so it's tab
147
and barcode ending 656.
656, thank you. That's the critical incident policy statement dated down the bottom we see January 2016 by former Commissioner Scipione.
Correct.
And as indicated, those sentiments remain applicable to the current critical incident environment.
I believe they do.
Thank you. All right. Now, about to go to the P1179. It's 12:57. Commissioner, would you like me to bat on, or would you prefer to take it?
You won't finish in the next 3
I
minutes.
don't think I have approximately 25, 30 minutes left, I'd
I
say.
think we might take a break. Mr. Smart, did you have something you wanted to raise?
Oh, sorry.
I think we might take the luncheon adjournment, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I'm ahead of myself. Thank you.
Right. So, Assistant Commissioner, we might go now to the P1179 form, and we'll bring that up on the screen. This is tab 52, Public Exhibit 5. come up on the screen now. Am I correct in this assessment of when this form is to be completed? It is where a region commander has given consideration as to whether or not to declare a matter of critical incident under the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act, including where they have turned their mind to whether or not it should be a critical incident and decided against making such a declaration?
Yes.
And indeed, if we can go, please, I'm sorry to jump around, back to tab 27C, tab 147. This is in relation to a memorandum that you have helpfully annexed from the former Commander of Professional Standards, Ms Talbot. That's at barcode 661.
Yes.
Just wait for that to come up. Thank you.
The tab number for that one is.
I'm sorry, that's
tab
147.
70.
147, Exhibit 27C.
And the barcode reference.
Barcode reference
Sullivan, just to be sure.
is page 661 of tab 147, commencing at 638. That's now come up on the screen. Just for the purposes of identification, this is a memorandum to all region commanders from Assistant Commissioner Talbot dated the 25th of September 2018 entitled Critical Incident Declaration Form. Do you agree with that? And that was a memorandum accompanying the form that was then available on the PSC intranet site, together with some commentary indicating that the form had been developed to ensure consistency in the information provided to this Commission. Agree? And also that it was a formal mechanism to record the reasons underpinning a decision to declare a matter of critical incident, but also not to declare in circumstances where a region commander has turned their mind to that matter.
Yes, it doesn't say those specific words, but I think it's very clear by the mechanism and the document itself, when you're read together, it means that when you declare or not declare, you give a decision and you give some rationale and reasons for that.
And in terms of the rationale and reasons for not declaring, what do you see as the importance, if any, of setting out the reasons to not declare?
It's one of those situations where almost when you don't declare, it's of equal importance, if not even perhaps more importance, to really spell out clearly that what you've considered and then give some reasoning as to why you've eliminated that or reduced it in importance, and then holistically deal with that decision. And, you know, that's sometimes all of us as decision makers, self-included, we don't always get that formula right, absolutely. I don't sit here as any perfect decision maker and or rationale, narrator. But it is important in our line of work, in our level, on matters of importance, to give a clear decision and then give some type of supporting reasoning to that, whether it is to do or not to do.
So that, for example, it can be drawn upon in a context like this.
Yes.
It's an auditable trail of the region commander's reasons for not declaring, which of course has the consequence, doesn't it, that there's no oversight by this body.
That's right. If not declared, there is no monitoring capability by the LEC.
And I just want to ask you about your experience in relation to where these forms go. So we understand that they don't go to PSC, that is the non-declaration forms, is that right?
Yes, my understanding they remain with the Region Command / Commander, but essentially with the Region Command. I would say most likely within their professional standards portfolio, led by their inspector, being the professional standards manager.
All right. But they're not collated in any central repository, to your knowledge?
No.
Can I suggest they should be?
Well, I would say it suggests that they should be absolutely collated by the region. So the region themselves should have an empirical data set of what they've considered and declared,
Yes.
and what they've considered and not declared. Are you talking about a corporate area where all forms would go to?
Precisely.
May I ask for what purpose and whose review though, perhaps?
Certainly. So can I suggest this as a potential model, given what you've indicated about where they are currently stored, that they might be stored within the Region Command as one source, but also collated by PSC as a comprehensive record of all P1179 non-declarations. So, for example, someone like you or one of your experienced investigators can review them, identify any matters of concern, identify any trends, ensure, for example, that they are being filled out completely and correctly.
I don't think there's any pure opposition to that, except that the structure around that needs absolute clarity.
Yes.
Because at the moment, as stated before, when declared, PSC have a role.
Yes.
I appreciate as in we, own the guidelines, but ultimately they're a corporate document. So for that process to occur, there has to be change and agreement by the executive as to that change occurring.
Yep.
But I would say to you that there might be some options to at least put that forward.
Yep.
And see what the organisation's position is with that.
Can I suggest it's difficult to see, from my perspective as counsel assisting, a downside in having PSC undertake what I might loosely term a quality assurance role by becoming the central repository for P1179 non-declarations?
Well, object to that. Really, what the proposing is our own disposition. The witness has already said that there needs to be some architecture or structure around that. I think that's sufficient for the purposes of the inquiry. Our own personal opinions.
It's not her personal opinion, Mr. Gollan. That's not how I understood the question to be phrased. It was, perhaps we can I could say, I see some. Could you answer, if I was to consider making a recommendation, Assistant Commissioner Cotter, that there would be some utility in having the Professional Standards Command also have a copy of any, of all P1179 forms completed, both declared and non-declared, to allow for the option of some kind of quality assurance process in relation to those forms. What would your view be about a recommendation of
Fully
that
understand
kind?
the question, absolutely fully understand it. And I will say again, that for that to occur, I have to have the remit to
Oh,
do it. Because
absolutely.
without the remit, it's just a warehouse.
Yes.
Yep. And so you'd need to have some guidance as well in those guidelines about what you're meant to do with those forms beyond simply putting them in a file.
Absolutely, and then
That's sensible.
where our, it's not where our role begins and ends in that review. So I understand fully the question, but I also say, at the moment, you're asking me about a state of the world that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And whilst I'm representing the Commissioner here, I don't speak for him or the Executive.
Understood.
in what the future state might look like. I can say if you make a recommendation to that, it will be absolutely appropriately and duly considered as you would expect.
Do you see any benefit in a quality assurance process of some kind, in an effort perhaps to ensure that there is consistency in decision-making between the different regions, for example?
Yes, I do, and I also say two things. Professional standards might be the area to do that, but there is also a Deputy Commissioner above that region commander who, you know, is there as that person all day on every other issue, not just critical incidents, to be that buffer, sounding board, piece of wisdom, review mechanism, quality assurance, whatever terms we would like to use. That maybe there's some scrutiny at that level. Maybe that's the first port of call, and then maybe then professional standards. But if you're looking for a warehouse to put them, I can't torpedo that idea, right? But what I can say is, at the moment, there is no structure, no imprimatur for me to do anything with that.
That's certainly understood. We're just exploring the counterfactual where there might be such a structure and whether you see benefit in that. And can I suggest, for example, the benefit might be that a region commander and the Deputy Commissioner who sits above that particular region commander might have a particular view of things so that you get an approach taken within that region command, but that could be different to the view of a region commander and his Deputy Commissioner in another area. So that would enable you, for example, as the subject matter expert in relation to critical incidents, to raise issues that arise from non-declarations that are provided to PSC. So, for example, the region commander could have the benefit of those robust discussions that you've very helpfully referred to as being important in driving the best decision making in your Section 54 response. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree along the lines of put your submission forward, put your recommendation forward, and I think they need to be considered. I don't come with the imprimatur to say yay or nay to that.
Yes.
But I see the merit in what you are saying.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Is it right that because you don't see those forms, that is the P1179 non-declarations, you don't have a sense as to whether or not they're being routinely completed in relation to non-declarations for critical incidents?
Yeah, well, my command is blind to the fact whether one is completed or not upon a non-declaration.
Okay. Are you aware of any training that is provided to assistant commissioners and superintendents, for example, who might act in that role in relation to the importance of completing the non-declaration?
I put in my statement there is no formal training whatsoever to that level of officer around critical incidents.
Yes.
Superintendent, otherwise there is some courses that might touch on it. We do run a critical incident investigators course, but that's primarily for
Skis.
the investigators and skis.
Yep.
We don't do one for at the command level and then ultimately those people. That is, you know, whether it be a training program or simply a package that spells out clearly and I will absolutely concede the guidelines need some shake-up with regards to that very specific point.
Yep.
We will take care of that, absolutely. Because I do see it as something where we can bolster. So, you know...
Just pausing there, you're referring to the critical incident guidelines themselves?
Yes, we're making reference to the need to complete a 1179 when you declare, and equally when you don't declare, and what you should be, you know, considering. This is the Act, this is the legislation.
Yes.
110, 111 primarily.
Yes.
And then emphasising again make a decision, time and date stamp it, and give some reasons for it.
So there's those critical incident guidelines, and we've gone to those, but there's also, aren't there, the specific role guidelines for each of the senior officers who have involvement in relation?
A checklist, again, there's some nomenclature issues there. Sometimes there are guidelines, sometimes there are checklists. So I think we need to tidy that up as well as an organisation and
Okay,
make a checklist so it's distinct from the guidelines, which is the principal document,
Okay.
and the checklists for the respective roles and responsibilities.
Thank you. So that's a very good point, that, and we'll pull these up now if we could, please. This is at tab 147, 27, Exhibit 27C at 671. Sorry, 31C, thank you. All right, so we see there Region Commander guidelines, and that's what you're referring to, is it the
Yeah, that's one of the documents I referred to, but yes, certainly.
do you say that that is better described as a checklist, or is the checklist over the page perhaps if we go?
No, it's called what it is called, Region Commander Guidelines.
Yes.
What I see that as in reality is more I suppose a checklist, or what I see it perhaps developing into is a more prescriptive set of what they must do,
Yes.
when they must do it,
Yes.
and how they must do it. I think there needs to be absolutely more assistance provided to those region commanders from us, and I'll concede we at PSC can, readily fix that up, because I've got to say I read this and somewhat with a little bit of surprise found it not meeting the expectations that I wanted to do.
Including in terms of the non-reference to the P1179 form?
But one, yes, that's certainly included. It's
What are the other?
not included there.
What are the other things that struck you when you reviewed this?
Well, I just think it needs to be in again a chronological document that takes a region commander through, or any of the other officers below them, from when they first get notified and the step-by-step process they have to do. Just go, okay, I've done that. I've spoken to my commander. I've
Yes.
spoken to my professional standards manager. I've ensured there's a 1179. I've given dictation over the phone because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I know there'll be a document there completed. These are my reasons. These are my rationale. Who else do I notify? I might talk to my deputy. I'm just ad-libbing here, but
Yes.
I'm talking through a little bit of a cheat sheet, checklist, whatever words we want to use. I don't want to call it guidelines, because the guidelines will be the guidelines.
The guidelines, yes.
And this will be annexes to that, which is what they are to be and are, but I just think they need a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of prescription that is more helpful than perhaps where they are at the moment.
You're talking about a fairly wholesale review by the sound of things.
I am.
Yep. Where are these guidelines to be found? I don't understand them to be annexed to the critical incident guidelines.
They're all on
themselves.
the professional standards websites, internet sites. Yeah.
Okay.
They're all very findable.
They're findable, but they're not, as you indicated, they're not attached in a single spot. So if an acting region commander prints off the critical incident guidelines to look at them, they won't immediately find their own checklist. And
No.
there's utility in combining them in a single document, do you think?
Yeah.
That's just one suggestion from the bar table.
I'm a fair believer in one-stop shop, and I think we have a role to equally help better.
Yes. Can we go, please, to the critical incident guidelines, just in terms of the Section 111(1)B, public interest matters. So that's at the same tab. 647 is the barcode reference, please. Should indicate we're looking here at the current version of the guidelines, which is February 2024. Is that right?
Yes.
So do you see there the reference to the public interest criterion? I'll just read it onto the record. The Region Commander may also make this declaration if they have, quote, other grounds for considering it's in the public interest to do so, reference to section 111, subsection 1B. This may include where an incident could attract significant attention, interest or criticism, and the public interest is best serviced by investigating the incident as a critical incident. See that?
Yes.
Has that changed in your experience during any iteration of the critical incident guidelines, that formulation?
I don't know. That all I see is what is in front of me, the current version. I might say this version, or this, once upon a time, way back when I was a boy, the critical incident guidelines were very prescriptive, perhaps even overly prescriptive, but I would say helpful document. And they were perhaps 80 pages long. I'm talking the turn of the century, back in the dinosaur days. And they went through, and then in 2019, they were sent out to, I won't mention, to a law firm to develop a plain English version.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no criticism of the law firm involved, because at the end of the day, what we requested came back and we said, we'll accept that. I didn't know some of that, I must say, until very recently. So I look at, from when I used to do these things for a living, and now in a different role, I was a little surprised at perhaps the brevity of it, the structure of it. Mm-hmm. Again, it doesn't flow from, it sort of flows, but I think sometimes you can rationalise too much when you redo these type of documents. I think there needs to be a little bit of old school thought pattern in it and make it a holistic document which sets out who, the what, the when, the why for all the people involved, to give absolute clarity in that one-stop shop, one document, checklists for ticking purposes, literally assigned to them. So they can pick that up. But of course I can't make it 87 pages long.
No.
So there will be a tussle to get it the right amount of pages. But I think there is some input into these guidelines that we need to buy back.
Just pausing there. For example, in relation to...
I didn't object.
Do you want to move close to the microphone?
I didn't object about the discussion of the communications between the law firms, so as not to be difficult, and it was fine at that level of generality. I just say that the Commissioner of Police maintains any privilege over that, lest there be any suggestion that my silence was...
That's fine, Mr. Smart. I don't think we've got any interest in obtaining that advice, but...
No, not at all.
No, and as I'll say, they helped us out and we accepted the homework that we got back.
Yes.
So
I was just going to pause you momentarily to suggest that the missing persons standing operating procedures has a number of checklists in relation to each officer's role for missing persons investigations. You're familiar with that, no doubt. Something along those lines. Is that what you had in mind in relation to this document? It's quite specific, isn't it, that protocol?
I think it needs, plain English is wonderful and we're not going to lose that, but prescription and absolute what you do at what time and who does it is important.
Not least because you often have people in acting roles dealing with critical incident matters, for example, an acting duty officer or an acting superintendent?
All of that, and our role as an organisation is to help our people. And part of the way that professional standards can help, part of the way I can personally help and put my footprint over it is to make sure that we get the best product out there. And I think we have some work to do to go back and reflect and review this
Yes.
document and the checklists, or whatever we want to call them, and have a better document which helps all our people make
Okay.
the best decision they can.
Thank you. Against the backdrop of those remarks, can I suggest that this potentially nebulous area of public interest is one where there may well be benefit from fleshing out the thinking in relation to the types of matters that could fall within that category. So, for example, we understand that there have been three matters under Section 111(1)(b) since 2017 out of a total of 297 critical incidents.
When you say now 3, are you referring to the one from
Friday?
the other evening?
Yes.
Yep.
That indicates, doesn't it, that the declaration of public interest critical incidents are very, very rare?
Yes, it does. I think we dug up a couple or more where we had shootouts and things like that, referenced in my statement.
Thank
Go
you.
to them if you wish. But give or take, it's a minutiae of number, isn't it?
Yes.
And that is, as we've discussed before in evidence, that most of the time it's clear cut
Yes.
via 110 or 110 criteria.
Yes. So the grey zone, if I can call it that, in relation to Section 111(1)(b) is where a region commander making this decision will need the most help.
Yes.
And that's where, can I suggest, it might be of assistance to provide further information, including by way of examples of matters that have been called, to provide something in the nature of a broad framework.
Certainly there needs to be, the definition needs to be fleshed out.
Yes.
I don't know about a set of prescriptive examples, but I'm certainly open. I think we are certainly open as an organisation to reviewing a very healthy definition for what public interest is. Bearing in mind the Act itself, owned by LEC,
Yes.
isn't helpful in defining it at all, and it's not necessarily the legislator's role either, but it doesn't help. There's no help given there either.
Perhaps you have a recommendation for the Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner.
We can work on that out of session.
Thank you. All right. Now, we've canvassed the pros and cons we've canvassed at least the positive components of the critical incident model in terms of the independence that it provides, amongst other matters. What, to your mind, is the downside where you're in that grey zone, if any, where you're in that grey zone, where it's unclear where a matter is in terms of Section 111? What's the downside of declaring the critical incident for abundant caution, that is, erring on the side of caution, and then later revoking it once it becomes apparent what the position is? Because that approach gives you the benefit of the critical incident model until you're clear that it's no longer the appropriate course to take.
I believe we need a criteria which, and I appreciate public interest is that grey area. I think 110, I keep saying 110, just exudes public interest because of what it is. So there's no greater definition than those criteria, those examples. I equally do not think it is proper to just declare for the sake of declaring.
Yes?
I think there has to be 110 is clear. I think with proper mechanics and proper consideration, public interest can be explained with, citing whatever criteria we need. And I think the organisation is very willing to explore that. spoke to it in some earlier evidence around the stigma. It's that balance of the probity and the transparency versus, however we want to say it, critical incidents do have a stigma associated with it.
Yes.
The attrition rate to our officers involved or witness and to the families of them, and I can talk all day about how it impacts the families of people who have lost police, like killed in the line of duty. That has ramifications which we could talk for hours on, and I've seen it, been involved with a number of them as well. I understand, and I've already said it, and I'll stand by it, the probity and the transparency must take primacy. It must. We do have to balance that in a really balanced and sensible way with calling critical incidents when they shouldn't be declared. We've got to declare them when they should be declared. That's what we've got to get better at. Of course, we can declare and we can revoke. My position would be, and our position would be, declare right. Declare right the first time.
And in pursuit of that objective, as I understand your evidence, you think there's more work that can be done to provide greater assistance to region commanders and others in relation to declaring right for public interest critical incidents. Is that fair?
We as an organisation owe it to our decision makers to help them out, and we at PSC and we at this and we as an organisation will absolutely try and educate, train better, have more prescription in our documents to help them.
Can I come back to a question that we'd asked earlier, and I know it's not for you to say, but would the option of being able to review the declared and the undeclared P1179 forms help inform PSC about whether the guidance they're giving in the critical incident guidelines is kind of hitting the mark? Is consistency one measure of whether those guidelines are effective?
Yes, and again, I understand your question. The issue arises as a peer assistant commissioner to another assistant commissioner. Even if I had such a capability, I could give advice, guidance, opinion. Whether they take it or not then comes back to that other position. Yeah, thanks for your advice, Peter. I'm going to file that under something else. So this is why I'm saying the architecture and the structures, as Mr. Gollan also said, to use his word, is important. And, because I haven't got that imprimatur.
No, I appreciate that.
And realistically, we could give an opinion. It might have to go to the Deputy Commissioner. It might have to go crossways and downwards, right? And then it's up to them.
I wasn't even thinking, Mr. Cotter, necessarily of taking issue with a particular critical incident declaration, but seen as a review of the 40-odd critical incident declarations in a year or the 80-odd over 2 years, and that's the declaration. So say there's 50 or 60 a year where they come into consideration, some of which are declared, some aren't. So let's say 50 for example's sake. So if those 50 in a year are reviewed and the Professional Standards Command then has an opportunity to see whether there's a general consistency in the pattern of decision making, and if there's real outliers, whether some of those outliers could be addressed by clearer guidance in the guidelines.
I accept, Commissioner, your principle. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. Whether it's PSC or not,
That's
I can't. I think what you've said has got merit. How could I not say, very aware of what you're both putting to me. It's got merit. Who, how, what imprimatur, what do we do with it after someone does review it? Who takes notice of it? Obviously they're things that need to be worked through.
Yeah, thank you.
But the principle itself is sound.
Thank you.
And with respect, they're very meritorious points that you raise as well about the need for any model in which you would have that role, you and your staff, to be clear to other region commanders, lest one be seen to be interfering in the discretion of another region commander.
As the commander of PSC, I don't have many friends as it is. How many more do you want me to lose? No, I say that with obviously a bit of, just to break the ice a little. But look, yeah, it has to be a spirit of cooperation. Professional Standards Command does have a very good relationship with all our peers, right? We do.
Yes. All right, now I'm coming to the end of my examination, but you've had an opportunity, haven't you? I can take you to some of the specific articles, but you would be aware broadly of the themes that emerged following Miss Lucina's death in relation to media reports that identified inconsistencies, for example, in relation to Miss Docatura's matter being declared a critical incident, and two other matters, one in Casino and one in St Mary's, also being declared critical incident matters.
I'm aware of Tatiana's facts, not really sure of the other two you've referenced.
All right, would you like me to bring them up on the screen there?
Yeah.
So, all right, let's go to tab 124, please. This is Miss Drew Douglas. We have that. This is an article by Miss Leah Harris of the ABC News entitled "Drew Douglas died in Sydney after a delayed police response. New figures highlight a growing problem." It's dated the 19th of August 2023. Barcode reference 8639317 to 8639324. Could we just give Assistant Commissioner Cotter an opportunity to just briefly peruse that, to familiarise himself with it, please?
Yes, we'll just
I'm
wait
so
for it.
sorry, I thought it was coming up.
It is. When you're ready to turn the page, Assistant Commissioner, let us know.
My reading has improved. I can go on to page 2.
Thank you.
I think I've got a fair idea of the theme, Ms. Sullivan.
Right, we might just go to.
I'm happy for, obviously, council to read it.
Thank you. If we could just go to the next page, I'll just point out something at barcode 319. You'll see there the reference to figures obtained by ABC News under Freedom of Information laws show the average police response times to lower priority 000 calls in New South Wales has increased significantly in the past year. It goes on to set out those, but it specifically refers to priority 2 calls. The information is as follows. For priority 2 calls, the average response time has also increased slightly from 10 minutes and 50 seconds in the 2019-20 financial year to 11 minutes and 4 seconds last year. Do you see that? Were you aware in your PSC role of reporting of this nature raising concerns about delayed police response to domestic violence 000 calls?
In a very much a senior officer role, not absolutely specific to professional standards, but I know it's been a topic of discussion and intent to respond as quickly as we can with benchmarks, corporate benchmarks of under 10 minutes, I know, for all jobs, but certainly priority 2s.
And we can go to it, but if you accept from me that this article, the relevant reference is on page 321, this article raises concerns about no critical incident investigation having been called in relation to Miss Lucina's death, against the backdrop of Miss Drew's death, where a critical incident investigation was called.
I think that article talks about Tatiana specifically. It might talk about Miss Drew, sorry.
Well, there is a critical incident investigation is called in relation to, so for example, it says on page 318, police have launched a critical incident investigation to examine why officers didn't visit the house after the initial call to 000.
Okay, here, fine, thank you, yep.
And then it later goes on to note at page 321, but no critical incident investigation has been launched into Miss Lucina's case.
Okay,
You see that?
exactly,
Yes.
yeah.
So I can take you to another example. In fact, I will do that. That's it. Commissioner, I tender that article before I move on.
So that article, and remind me the tab that was under.
That
again,
is
Ms.
tab 124, and the barcode reference is 8639317 to 8639324.
And that's the ABC report dated the 19th of August 2023.
Correct.
And that will be Exhibit 32C.
Thank you.
Probably doesn't need to be a C, actually, now I think about it. I think that
Public
could
domain.
easily be a public exhibit.
Thank
So
you.
I will make that Public Exhibit 6.
And if we could next go, please, to tab 126. This is an article in The Australian, dated 29 June 2024. We'll just pull that up. The barcode reference is 8639327. Thank you. Have you seen this article before, Assistant Commissioner?
No, I haven't, Ms. Sullivan.
All right, this is relatively brief. We might just ask you to look through it.
Thank you, I've read that first.
Next page, please.
Yeah, I accept the tenor of that argument.
Yes, if I could particularly draw your attention to the remarks of Northern Region Assistant Commissioner Peter McKenna, who referred to the 000 call being made to police shortly after 1:30am, but the police only acknowledged the call at 2:25am. You see that?
Yes.
And he states, that has given me enough concern to ask for an independent review. What was that delay and whether it was justified or otherwise? He said on Saturday afternoon, what police were doing prior to that and what other jobs there will form part of that investigation, and that investigation being a critical incident investigation. You see that? These articles, I suggest, underscore the importance of that theme of consistency in decision-making in relation to critical incident investigations. Do you agree?
Yes.
And can I suggest that Miss Lucina's matter does appear to be an outlier against the backdrop of those matters?
On the time delays, yes, it does. But some of those things, which, for example, Mr. McKenna spoke to in declaring that, were addressed in some emails in the pack provided by the LEC to me, or yourself to me, where certainly those issues were considered very much about who was on, what were they doing, were they gainfully employed.
Just pausing there, are you talking about the Godfrey report?
No, I'm talking about the email. There was an email, I think, in the afternoon. I've read two emails from Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Scott
from
Tanner.
Superintendent
So I beg your
Tanner.
pardon.
Thank you.
Sorry, he doesn't have a pseudonym, does he?
He does not
No,
have a
he does
pseudonym, no.
Mr. Tanner wrote two emails, from my
Yes.
understanding, both addressed at least to Tracy Chapman, as
Yes.
well as the second one covering off on a broader range of people. inclusive of his Deputy Commissioner,
Yes.
I might add.
Yes. But pausing there, as we've established, he was then the Richmond Police District Commander, wasn't
Yes,
he?
yes.
So that review is lacking the independence that a critical incident investigation would bring, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes. Sorry.
But he certainly turned his mind
Yes.
to the very essence of what Mr McKenna has turned his mind to rightfully here. And I'd say either Tracy Chapman and or Scott Tanner rightfully turned their mind to that, hence that description in that email of 3:15 on the, whatever it is, the 4th of January 2023.
Yes. But pausing there, can I just indicate to you, you may be aware of this evidence, that Superintendent Tanner did not familiarise himself with the VKG recording of what was happening during the relevant period from 7 to 8 p.m. You can accept that from me.
I would absolutely accept that from you.
And what that recording demonstrates is that there has been non-compliance with the radio operation group protocols for the broadcast of priority 2 incidents in a number of respects. You aware of that?
I'm aware of absolutely what you're referring to.
And can I suggest that that systemic issue is something that a critical incident investigation would have exposed?
It certainly would have looked into, explored, and obviously reviewed all of that, yes.
And that really demonstrates, doesn't it, the significant benefit of that model relative to a standard homicide investigation.
Yes, and a critical incident is to run distinct from, parallel with, but to look at very different things, as we've spoken to before.
All right.
We might tender that
Thank you,
article in
Commissioner.
the Australian, which is the 29th of June 2024. It's under tab 126 and it was barcode 863927 to 863928. And that will be Exhibit 7.
Thank you. Some very limited questions remaining. Before I conclude, Assistant Commissioner, I'd just like to get the benefit of your views about reflections on this matter and what the learnings are from a systems perspective, please.
Let me begin, thank you. Policing is hard, policing is busy, and there's a lot going on a lot of the time. I know that's a very sweeping statement, but it is a truism, and I think it was a truism on this particular night in the Ballina, Richmond area and north and south of it. What I will say is that from my reading, every officer, whether they be in the radio room at Newcastle, manning the car crews, turning up and dealing with the crime scene and the murder that they discovered, every one of those officers went about their duty with good faith and were doing their best. Perfect is always the enemy of good. Were some of the things that occurred on that night absolutely perfect, in my opinion, clearly on reflection by the organisation? Probably not perfect, but there was certainly no malice, dereliction of duty, or anything else, in my opinion. They all tried. They were all working. They were all busy in various ways. Walk a mile in the shoes of that radio room. There were double beeps. There were jobs north, south, east and west of that coast up in that northern area. And unfortunately, things do get missed. I understand there were timeframes not met in the original calling of the job, the subsequent callings of the job via the KPIs and the framework that is set. Equally, there was decision-making by the police in the field. They were en route to a job on the highway. which came in 6 or 7 or 8 minutes before Miss Lucina's call for help. They were almost probably there at that job.
Not quite.
They did the job and then came back on. In hindsight and reflection, you know, two went to that job, from my understanding, for officer safety. And we have 2 bridges north and south of Sydney, one called the Jim Affleck Bridge on the Hume Highway heading to Goulburn, and one the Peter Gordon Wilson Bridge heading to Newcastle. They are constant reminders to police of deaths on our road by police, either doing RBT in the case of, and traffic stops in the case of Mr Wilson, the late Mr Wilson, and in the case of Mr Affleck, putting down, you know, very preliminary road spikes back in the day to stop, you know, a murderer. And, you know, or it became a murderer. So what I'm saying is, we understand it is a realism to say that when police respond to incidents on the highway, officer safety is important. You've got to balance that again against a woman getting the hell bashed out of her, if you believe the description, and I do. Probably a lot of people would look at that again and maybe make a different decision, split the car crew, whatever, and even though they're in separate cars. But they still did their best with no ill intent.
Can you take it that that's accepted, Assistant Commissioner? Thank you for reminding us about that, but that is certainly accepted? That
I'm not sure what's it.
No, but I just wanted to let you know, but thank you.
And then, when they did respond, again, could they have done more? I think anyone would say yes, they could have. What more could have looked like? To give themselves an equal opportunity or a more of an opportunity to investigate, discover, still might have ended up with the same outcome. So there are little, I say little in a demeaning way or undermining way, there are little failings across. But everyone tried their best to do what they had in front of them for their own safety and ultimately for the safety of Miss Lindy Lucina, who unfortunately nobody could save because of the actions of Mr Huber, who's been convicted, as we know. This is a hard business, and again, I just hope, I don't see, if I look at it through my lens, I don't see any misconduct. I see areas where we can obviously patch up, bolster. Some of that falls to me, some of that falls to the organisation, and some of that falls to the policies and the procedures and some of the systems that we need to absolutely make sure that we classify jobs properly when they come in, and that we do have a bit of a hard line with, if it's a 2, it's a 2 unless there's absolutely strong underscoring reasons which flip that. And I do believe that when we respond to jobs, I think we have to be really vigilant that we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the community watching us, that we will get out and do the very best job we can.
I have no further questions.
Mr Smart, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask the Assistant Commissioner, Mr Gollan?
So, could I ask for a 5-minute adjournment, please?
5-minute adjournment, so you stay step down from the witness box. Mr Cotter will be back in 3:05. Mr Gollan.
Commissioner pleases, I might start my questions.
Yes.
Do you prefer to be addressed as Assistant Commissioner or Commander? Does it matter?
Hardest question I've been asked all day. You can call me anything you like, Mr. Gollan, please.
With respect, I'll call you Commissioner. As an Assistant Commissioner, it's a rank that you've earned. Can I ask you a couple of questions? It seemed to me that the history that you gave at the beginning of, well, the commencement of your evidence would demonstrate a very broad and vast level of experience in many facets of police work. Agreed?
Yeah, I've had an interesting, diverse and fulfilling career with a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, and it's from the experience of being a police officer that you can draw on, whether it be intuitive or whether it be that you've actually turned your mind to your previous experiences that allow you to make decisions all the time on your feet, but also sometimes with the benefit of reflection.
Yes.
And generally, police officers with experience have exactly that available to them. If they're well experienced in the field, they put themselves in a position where they can ask themselves intuitive and sometimes direct questions. What do I do about this scenario in front of me?
I agree.
And there's been some discussion, both during your evidence and before, about the classifications. Put aside the classification number 1, where the difference between 2 and 3, and don't worry about 4 and 5. And initially, with the material that's available to them, the dispatch gives it a categorisation with the benefit of the information that's given to them.
Yes.
And the information that's given to them is limited to the complaint or the call for help, as it were.
Yes.
And the police officers that are on the ground get to make further and more informed decisions by what they're confronted with.
Yes.
So you might have a Category 2 domestic violence, and on the ground you're able to establish that one of the controversial parties has removed themselves to a neighbour or something along those lines in a domestic violence situation, and so it might more properly be categorised as a Category 3.
It's open to be on the facts as they're presented at the time they're presented. Yeah, it's open for things to be upgraded equally or downgraded.
Correct. And given that they're dealing with the issue that's in front of them, they might not concern themselves with what's going on with categorisation on the CAD system, rather they deal with what it is that's there in front of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and the police officers that attended upon the accident scene on the highway, you understood that there was a question about police safety, and as I understand it, that was something that wasn't foreign to you, and I think you gave us examples of people that have suffered in the context of circumstance that gave rise to a further and lethal circumstance.
I think any activity by police on a highway has a real and present degree of danger to it.
Of course it does. And on the 3rd of January, going north over a blind corner and a rise, you might expect that that appreciation by the police officer was not unreasonable, that they would require some help for traffic flow.
I object to this. Which police officer, at what point in time, based on what information? If this line of questioning is to be pursued, it should be done with precision, based on the time of relevant events, based on the information that was known, based on the VKG, based on the CAD incident log.
Well,
I don't think, Mr. Gollan, this has really come up in the course of, I mean, there've been some general comments, but nothing that precise for this witness. Can you give me an indication of what you looking to,
Well, the
do
inference that arose by reason of the line of questioning pursued by my learned friend was that there was, and this has been throughout the whole of the proceedings, there's a category 2 and there's a category 3. Category 2 takes a priority over category 3. You heard from the dispatch officers on the first day of my involvement, at least in this inquiry, that there is a movable feast, as it were, depending upon the information that the police officers on the ground appreciate and what they make of it. I'd like to put that issue to the side because, with great respect, it's a distraction about whether it's a 2 or a 3, given that the police officers that were on the ground took a view that there was an imperative for safety, not of themselves, but of members of the public.
I think they've given that evidence. I'm not sure that asking Mr Cotter about that is different, unless you wanted to ask him something about whether priority 2 should be upgraded or priority 3 should be upgraded necessarily when an officer uncovers something different on the ground.
Well, if the Commissioner, if you're content that it falls outside of his purview and the other evidence will be that's left for us to interrogate, I'm content with that. But this is a police officer where there were certain propositions put to him that priorities needed to be regarded as priorities, but that's not to be looked at in a vacuum.
With respect, my friend should be clear about what has been put. We had the benefit of Assistant Commissioner Cotter's open reflections, and it might be that evidence that you're referring to, but I'm a bit unclear about how this is being formulated and the assistance of it in the absence of all the detail.
Commissioner, I'm in your hands. As I understand from your response to the objection, you well understand that it is a movable feast.
I understand the evidence that the officers who attended and the evidence of Superintendent Tanner, as well as Officer E, that sometimes when you get on the ground, what you find is perhaps different to the nature of the initial VKG response. So I understand that to be the case. I think that's consistent with what Assistant Commissioner Cotter said. So if it's along that line...
I noticed that he's just nodded his head to your proposition, and I accept that's...
But I think unless you wanted to ask him, the fact remains, though, that despite finding perhaps a more serious situation on the ground than what they'd anticipated, no one recategorised or called for the upgrade of the priority 3 traffic accident job.
That was the question that was objected to, and that was that people...
I didn't understand that to be... So perhaps you could ask that question again.
Some people... Sorry, I'll withdraw that. Do some police officers, rather than go back into the VKG or into the CAD system and recategorise it, do they deal with what it is that's in front of them?
Yes, they do.
And particularly in circumstances where they regard there's a risk to the public?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, there was a suggestion that there could be an agglomeration, as it were, of the information that might or might not be logged with respect to critical incidents. And I think that in fairness, you suggested, well, it would depend upon the architecture around it. What's the benefit of it? We're just not a warehouse, but it's got to be something meaningful done with it.
Yes.
In your experience as a police officer, the manner with which things are treated are informed obviously by the circumstance, but also the environment within which they occur, whether it be in Woolloomooloo or whether it be in somewhere out in the country, correct?
I'm not sure that's helping me very much, Mr Gollan. It's
Well,
a very general...
With great respect, the proposition was general, and that's exactly what I intend upon bringing to your attention, so that when we do get to the stage where we're trying to work out what the proper architecture or the better result might be, that it's not forgotten, that it's informed by the environment within which the events occur.
So you're talking about whether or not to declare a critical incident? Is that what you're...
No. The critical incident is something that is more further down the track, as it were. There are things that need to be relevantly considered within the environment within which things happen before you then turn your mind to the legislation. It would be, with respect, erroneous to consider the content of domestic violence or things of that nature in a very high built-up area, as opposed to somewhere out in the country where it's informed by the police officer's experience in those areas and the things that they're able to take from their
Can I
environment.
just, I'm loath to interrupt my friend, but again, we're in that territory of very fulsome articulations of the position that may be prone to influence the evidence. So that's
Oh,
unfortunate,
please.
and
I'm sorry, Mr. Gollan.
Please, this police officer's been nothing but frank and honest. I'm not suggesting
I didn't suggest otherwise, but it's not appropriate to articulate this level of detail in relation to the evidence that you're seeking to elicit in this manner, and I've raised it before.
Okay, maybe the police officer might be excused if it's going to take us anywhere.
I think the
But
challenge I had, Mr. Gollan, was I'm not really, I think I'd prefer that your questions are addressed with more specificity. So general discussions about decision-making in a region versus in a rural area are not assisting me. I'm more than happy for you to ask Assistant Commissioner Cotter about what might be done with a collection of completed P1179.
Let me put it to you in these terms, Assistant Commissioner. Would the assessment of the information that was gathered by reason of a common database, as it were, be influenced by the areas and area commands within which those events occur?
Sorry, it needs to relate, it can't just be a broad database, it needs to relate to the critical P1179.
I'd ask for the witness to be excused for the moment, please.
Mr. Cotter, would you mind just stepping down from the witness box and stepping outside for the moment while we have a discussion? Thank you.
Commissioner, it's not clear to me how this line of questioning that relates to systems matters is within the purview of Mr. Gollan's grant of leave. It's certainly within Mr. Smart's if he chooses to raise that aspect on behalf of the Commissioner, but I'm somewhat unclear.
I must say, Mr. Gollan, I'm not inclined to continue a grant of leave to this general line of question. I'm just not understanding it. I don't think it's useful. So I invite you to elaborate for me what it is that you intend to adduce and how that assists the three of your clients.
What was proposed in my learned friend's questioning and questions asked by the Commissioner was whether or not a repository, I think was the turn of phrase that it became, and that was a centralisation of all of the information that relates to the forms that relate to critical incidents. What I'm seeking to distinguish, should you come to a conclusion where you think that that's an appropriate course, and I'm not averse to that, but if it's an appropriate course, that it has more complexion than that. And so the generality of my question, with great respect, is actually more specific in it directs it to the local area commands rather than you take all of New South Wales information and put it in a repository. And if that were the case, with respect, it wouldn't put us in a position where we're any better off without knowing whether or not the environment within which these things occur influence the outcomes and influence the manner with which these complaints come in and how they're dealt with because of the resources that are particular to that particular local area command.
And how does that impact your clients, Mr. Gollan?
Well, under section 60A, it says that a person is authorised or required to appear in examination, or a person is Australian legal practitioner authorised to appear in examination may, with leave of the examining commissioner, examine or cross-examine any witness on any matter that the examining commissioner considers relevant. Now, clearly, my learned friend, and by reason of the follow-up questions asked by the commissioner, that this question of a repository is a matter that concerns you, and it's a matter that you may or otherwise have a view about, or you might dispose of it because of other considerations. We've got a witness now that has given partial evidence on the issue and said, yeah, I can see the benefit of that, but it's got to have some architectural structure around it that would allow it to be meaningfully used. I'm exploring that for the benefit of the Commission, should they be so inclined to turn their mind to that issue.
So, if I understand the purpose of your questions, it's to denote that any architecture or structure to an audit function for P1179s should have regard to the location at which the event took place or did not take place.
Yes, and the collateral considerations so far as resources are concerned, whether or not you've got police stations that are half an hour away from each other as opposed to what you might have here in central Sydney, where they can be attended to on foot if they need be because they're so close. And so those matters are relevant considerations.
I think that question can be fairly precisely put. I'm content, Ms Sullivan, to let that question be put. Could you put it as concisely as you can, Mr Goldman, because I think it's tight.
Oh, no, I understand that. It was only a very short compass within which I sought to explore it so that I could move on to matters that are otherwise
Good.
relevant.
Let's move on. Shall we get Mr Cotter back in and we'll put that question. Thanks, Mr Cotter.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. I apologise for putting you to that inconvenience. You recall that there was discussion about a repository, as it were, all of the information coming into one data bank rather than it being held with the local area commands.
Yes.
Well, that to be best understood and used to improve things, would some of the considerations involve the resources and the location within which those critical incident considerations arose?
Just in that little break, which was probably beneficial to everyone in the room, as well as myself, was to think about, I think I knew where your question was coming from. And I think everyone's opinion around this room is quite relevant to it, and so is yours. In that, if you are going to have some independent review mechanism to it over all the reports, declared or the non-declared, obviously, you've got to have the independence. You clearly can't make it a hometown decision because it only goes back to the same, perhaps, thought pattern. But to your very valid point, you need that local input into things such as the resourcing, the other calls going on, such as radio logs, the tyranny of distance given country versus city, even though both can be equally busy, and just because you're 100 metres away might not mean you're any closer than 10 kilometres away. It's all nuanced and balanced against the circumstances and the facts, the geography, the topography, the communities. Everything needs to be taken into account. So I would suggest that it's something like, a panel of people, perhaps with input from the people and the decision makers on the ground, perhaps at the time, at the superintendent and the region commander level, to thrash it out in a fair and reasonable way to get to the bottom of all. What were you thinking at that time? What else was going on in your universe that was so impactful? So it's like a sort of a mini review before you, it is what it is, I suppose, a mini review of that. The local considerations, the circumstances operating at any given time, city or country, the nuances, the idiosyncrasies, absolutely need to be taken into account.
Thank you. Now, to move on to the second topic, it was suggested to you that there was a DV homicide review, and candidly you said, well, I'm not sure what that particularly refers to. But as I understand your experience, you've worked in homicide?
4 years as a practitioner and 2 years as a commander.
Yes. And so you have a practical understanding, not just a policing understanding from an academic perspective.
Yes, very practical.
Yeah. And in a homicide, it's not just about getting the person, it's also about accumulating the evidence.
Very much so.
About what happened before the homicide.
Victimology, offenderology, a whole lot of ologies.
Yeah. And it's across the whole cross-section of before, during and after, so that you can not only have an understanding of evidentially what you can establish and prove, but also an understanding of why it happened.
Yes.
Yeah, and that might in fact impact upon the individual's mitigating circumstances should they find themselves being sentenced.
The investigation is all encompassing, to your point, and it includes, the starting point of any homicide investigation is not the wounds that inflicted the murder. Can be days, years, relationships, depending on the reasoning, the underpinning, or primeval reason, as I would say, as to why something occurs.
Yeah. And if you, as an investigating homicide police officer, uncover malpractice or matters of concern so far as the integrity of the police officers that may have been involved in the investigation or the accumulation of evidence, you have an obligation under the Police Act to report it, don't you?
Yes, you do.
And LEC has a complete oversight over any complaints of that nature, don't they?
Yes, any registered investigation that professional standards do or is commenced by anyone across the organisation, the LEC, via their shared access to our system,
Yes.
have optics over it in real time immediately.
Yes, but as you say, immediately, because of the nature of such a complaint or reporting might not be a complaint, it might be just reporting, correct?
Well, our misconduct database is basically for complaints, that are registered, whether they come from an internal source,
Yes.
or they come externally, or referred to us from the LEC in some cases. So that's the answer to your question, but can you please clarify what you mean by reporting that? I don't
Well,
understand.
if as a homicide, detectives generally, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So the general duties officer comes across a situation as they did here, which is horrendous on any view, but it doesn't matter what perspective you look at it, whether it be just a member of the community. But as a result, then there are detectives that are brought in, and that gives an independence, as it were, between the person who discovers and also the role of the detective, and that is to start from ground zero and put it all together, correct?
Yes.
And if they were to discover any maladministration, misfeasance, wrongful act or whatever else, they have an obligation under the Police Act to report it, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And so when we talk about what it was that was in the mind and what was put to you about Ma'am Chapman, her DV, that's domestic violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, my friend needs to articulate his questions with precision. When you say what was put to you, I was referring to a document that was prepared by Acting Assistant Commissioner Chapman. That's what I put.
You didn't seem to have any trouble with it, but let me put it to you in these terms. The document that was shown to you on the screen where she said that she expected for a DV homicide review in the context of the detectives investigating,
Yes.
that would encompass an obligation on those detectives that should they have found any maladministration, misconduct or otherwise, to report it, wouldn't it?
The investigating homicide investigators, I'm not sure who actually investigated that
Sure.
murder. I
No,
don't know
we're
if it was
talking about
local police
roles.
or otherwise, I'm not sure. So to narrow you, for my benefit, perhaps,
Sure.
excuse me, but the investigators, wherever they come from, whether they be the local or the homicide, their role in investigating, if they uncover somebody whose actions, a police officer before them or contemporary to them, during that investigation has done something absolutely wrong, and as in misconduct and or criminal, clearly, their job and role is to report that immediately in writing to their supervisor.
With the expectation that it'll then be investigated.
Yes, it would be then that complaint, that piece of misconduct and or criminality
Yes.
would be then independently investigated.
Just one final thing. The critical incident form that we've all been looking at, P1179,
Yes.
and the reasons for why you do and you don't go ahead with categorising it as a critical incident. And I imagine you've been exposed to this document many times.
I've seen it a few times.
And you had a look at it before you came here.
Yes.
And there's a part 3 that we've discussed at various stages there about decision of the region commander and why you don't indicate or why you do indicate that it's a critical incident.
Yes.
Before you get to that, you have to find yourself within the confines of section 110 or 111 1B, don't you?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. There's nothing further.
Anything arising, Ms Sullivan?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Mr Smart, was there anything else? Thank you. Thank you. I think we can release Assistant Commissioner Cotter from his summons. Thank you. Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. Thank you for coming to give evidence, and thank you for the thoughtful way in which you gave your evidence today. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You are released from your
Thank you,
summons.
Ms Sullivan. Thank you, Mr Gollan. Thank you, Mr Smart, and the other gentleman who I don't know at the back, I'm sorry, sir. But thank you. Thank you for being very fair and very reasonable.
Might we have a short 5-minute adjournment whilst I attend to some housekeeping matters?
Absolutely. I might, no, let's do that. We'll have a 5-minute adjournment and then we'll come back at, do you want 10 minutes? Would that be more helpful?
5 is perfect.
Right.
I'll work fast.
Excellent. 3:37.
If I could now tender some further material, this is, which I should indicate has been disseminated to the parties. This is tab 132, which is the section 54 and 55 response of Deputy Commissioner Pasanos. That is barcode 8641779 to 8641829.
So that will be Exhibit 32C.
Next, I tender the section 54 and 55 response of Assistant Commissioner David Driver. That is at tab 135, barcode 8634871 to 8634878.
And that will be Exhibit 33C.
Thank you. Then tab 154. This is the section 55 and 54 response of what's his rank? Detective Senior Constable Sean McKay, dated 8 December 2025. That is tab 154, barcode 8629895 through to 8629923.
And that will be Exhibit 34C.
Thank you. Next, I tender the notes of Inspector Lisa Jones, dated 3 January 2023, that are at tab 155, barcode 8607993 through to 8607994.
And that's Exhibit 35C.
Thank you. Are we doing? There is some documentation that has been provided by Superintendent Tanner in response to the call. That hasn't been barcoded as yet. Similarly, there is further documentation from Acting Assistant Commissioner Chapman, or rather Superintendent Chapman. It may be that material should be barcoded and then circulated, and
I think that's preferable because it allows us to keep that matter, those documents clear for our records.
thank you. So we'll
But
take
they've
that
been
course.
circulated, as I understand the responses.
No, they haven't been circulated as yet, but they will be.
Thank you. Were there any other formalities that you wanted to deal with at this point? We can deal with the tendering of those exhibits in chambers.
Thank you. No, but there's an application by the Commissioner of Police that you may wish to deal with now,
Yes,
Commissioner of
I
Convenient.
will. Before we've concluded the evidence, and I just wanted to say briefly, before we deal with formal applications, of course, any critical incident involves the death or serious injury to people will necessarily impact those people and their families. And I think this has been really clear from the evidence of all of the police witnesses that have come to give evidence, that it also personally impacts the police officers involved, and they feel very much the personal loss of having lost someone on their turf. And that, for those that have a broader geographical responsibility, can include anywhere in New South Wales. And we heard a number of officers give their personal condolences to the family. And I just wanted to make it clear that at times we've been talking very much about process and about what appears to be bureaucratic processes and things, but in doing so, we certainly have not meant any disrespect to, and we haven't lost sight of, the loss of life that has been the foundation of this investigation, not just Ms. Lucina, but also Ms. Dokataru, and most recently the woman who was found in the car at the end of last week, and who has not yet, as I understand it, been formally identified. So none of us, and I broadly encompass within that any legal representatives here today, as well as officers of the Commission, have intended any disrespect, and indeed the foundational purpose of our work here today has been to limit the possibility of losses of that kind occurring in the future, and to the extent that it sounds like we're engaged in bureaucratic discussion, it's with that very fundamental purpose in mind. With those remarks, I just wanted, I'm open to other applications. Mr. Smart, I've received your written application, and Mr. Gollan, did you have an application that you wanted to press, you'd foreshadowed, or? Thank you, yes.
In the circumstances having produced the material, my learned friend, as I appreciate what she has said, does not intend upon interrogating her evidence any further. And I guess I'm asking her through you, as it were.
Is there any reason why Ms.
No.
Thank you for reminding Mr. Gollan. Yes, Assistant Commissioner Chapman's formally released from her summons, and those instructing you can let her know. Thank you for your patience. Can I indicate I wasn't necessarily anticipating that a draft report would be provided for comment of the parties in this particular instance, as was foreshadowed, I think, in some emails to those that instruct you. The Commission's plan on this occasion was to deal with issues of to ensure that there's procedural fairness by adopting perhaps what is the more traditional approach, which is the exchange of submissions. So the draft report process, which the Commission certainly often uses, is done in circumstances where written submissions are not exchanged beforehand. So that was my current plan and intention. I think it's unnecessary and unhelpful to provide a draft report where written submissions have been exchanged.
Well, to consider my letter of submissions.
Okay.
But I joined my letter friend, Mr. Smart, in his application to speak orally to the submissions when the situation arises.
So I've received your written submissions seeking an opportunity to address the Commission orally, and you have, I think Mr Smart very helpfully pointed out that Section 70 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act actually specifically provides that the examining Commissioner is required to accept written submissions as far as reasonably possible in examinations that are being conducted with as little emphasis on an adversarial approach as is possible. Did you have anything that you wanted to say in addition to that material that you've provided?
No, I think what I would like to say is that the Commission's concern is a practical one. So obviously this is an investigation, it's not an adversarial proceeding, but it's an investigation that's bounded, I say, by special considerations under the letter. And you would be very familiar with them, the objects. And part of those objects, I think, summarised are public transparency, a cooperative relationship between this Commission and the Commissioner of Police, and the fostering of a positive atmosphere and outlook towards complaints. And that's in addition to procedural fairness. Now, in exercising the power to be heard from the different entities, but particularly the Commissioner of Police, we're asking you to have regard to those considerations. And we think, based on the evidence that's been given so far, that the Commissioner of Police has done that, has sent people who've given thoughtful evidence and not taken an obstinate or combative approach. And we think, consistent with what Ms Sullivan has done in her helpful opening address and given one perspective or one view of the facts, that fairness and that cooperative relationship and public transparency points towards the Commission exercising its discretion to hear another perspective. Now, the possible answer to that is, well, you can hear our perspective in written submissions. There are
You've read my mind.
Yes, and there are a few reasons that's not quite an adequate substitute in this case.
Can I just stop you? Could you address me on the question of why written submissions that might be made public on the
Yes.
Commission's website wouldn't answer the concerns that you're raising?
Yes. So I think there's three reasons. The first reason is that in a sort of very broad sense, they're available to the public, but they're not disseminated in the same way that, for example, Ms Sullivan's opening address was disseminated in the media. The media aren't in attendance. The media, it's not live streamed, and so there's an easy inference there that whatever is said in public hearing is going to be more accessible to the media, to the public, than written submissions that, while they are on a public website, very few people are going to read and report on. The second part of that is that there's a practice amongst courts and bodies and agencies to give some deference to the preference of agencies when they want to ask for a procedural concession. And consistent with the relationship between the Commission and the Commissioner, that we've heard extends beyond the black letter of the law. It requires, on one view, for everyone's job to be easier and done more effectively, some goodwill and some cooperation. And it's a modest request, I say, to make oral submissions, especially given that the tenor of the evidence given so far by my client and people on behalf of my client has been cooperative and respectful of this process, and we expect that the submissions will continue to be respectful and helpful and give another perspective, because at the end of the day...
But again, sorry, so I get the media bit.
Yep.
I don't understand why that couldn't be achieved through written submissions.
I think there's 2 points here. One is the difference between oral and written submissions. So oral submissions are apt to clarify misunderstandings. You can answer questions in real time. That's occurred a lot between you and council in this case. And I think it's helpful where we've covered a large amount of factual territory to have that opportunity in this case. And I think nuance and emphasis are often left out of written submissions and not portrayed in the same way that they are in oral submissions, which is relevant to the media point as well. Because, for example, the heartfelt acknowledgement that Mr. Cotter gave at the beginning of his evidence was something that was more effectively conveyed in an oral hearing, for example, with the appropriate emotion rather than just an acknowledgement in written submissions. That would be an example of the kind of thing we're talking about in this case. And the other point is that to a degree there is benefit in the relationship I talked about in just giving the Commissioner of Police what he or she is asking for as a concession to that kind of relationship, given the objects of the LEC Act. I mean, obviously it has its limits, but the Commissioner of Police has come here in good faith, and more than just good faith, has been helpful in cooperating with notices and quickly, and with sending people who think about things thoughtfully and respectfully. And given the relationship, one concession that might be made is to give the Commissioner of Police what he wants and the ability to make oral submissions, demo submissions.
Did you?
Could I say to that?
Let me just ask Mr. Smart one other question. At a practical level, Mr. Smart, were you expecting that this right would be accorded to all members of the bar table?
That's what I will say is that the case is strongest for Commissioner, given the systemic issues and his role, the role of this commission. A lot of the considerations favour that approach towards the other parties, especially, I suppose their case is more stronger on possible misconduct findings and the need to address those, any allegation or any suggestion of misconduct in the same way that it was addressed by Ms. Sullivan. So it's a question of parity and evenness. But the short answer to your question is yes, but ultimately it's a matter for those parties.
And on that same point then, were you expecting that the Commission would need to make an arrangement to hear those submissions on a day when all of the council would be available?
Yes, depending on whether they take it up.
Okay, so if that meant that the next time when competing calendars, including those of the Commission, was to intersect, might be potentially months down the track, you suggesting that the delay to allow for written submissions by all parties would be warranted in the circumstances? I'm just putting, I mean, that seems to me to be, I'm not trying to be difficult, but that seems to me to be a real practical challenge and one of the enormous benefits of written submissions.
Yes. Well, I think there are two responses to that. One, the Commission can just take an approach that courts often take, which is to give some available dates, and if council can't make them, council can't make them, and alternative arrangements have to be made. I also think that there are a lot of common issues, and we can talk cooperatively amongst each other about which council will deal with which issues. For example, the two main officers who attended the scene, there's not much difference between them, and we can take a sensible approach towards that and ensure that there's no delay because of this proposal.
Because at the moment, the anticipated timeframe for the preparation of and exchange of written submissions, I think, anticipated council assisting to provide her written submissions before the close of the calendar year, and for responses to be provided by the other legal representatives early, towards the end of January or early in February. And that was having regard to the fact that I acknowledge that most council will take a break over the summer.
Yes.
And so I, without having decided it, but at a practical level, I would be reluctant to make any arrangement that extends that timeframe.
Yes, and I should say as well that the Commissioner is seeking a week extension
I'd heard that.
his response, but certainly we can accommodate, we're happy to accommodate any date in February.
Mr. Gollan, and then I'll hear from Ms. Sullivan.
There's only one thing that I really wanted to add to that. Look, I'll work within whatever timetable, and I'm part heard in this case, and so it gives me some standing to deal with other cases that might be getting in the road, because I appreciate the urgency on one level of putting you in a position where you can reflect upon the evidence and come up with a report. My main and forceful submission with respect to oral submissions after the exchange of written submissions is it allows a dialogue where you can say, I'm troubled by this, because ultimately...
Sorry, can I just be clear? You're talking about the exchange of written submissions and then oral submissions.
Oral submissions immediately behind it. And the reason why I say that is it puts all cards on the table. But ultimately, as I see this inquiry and its utility, and on one view, the very forceful utility, is the framework and structure around these kind of incidents. And that's a collaborative thing. It not only speaks to each of the individuals that I've represented and what role they may or may not have, but it also speaks to their wealth of experience through me being in a position where some of the practical indifference can be highlighted and some of the things that are suggested can be embraced. And it seems to me that really what we're looking at is not, and I'm not preempting anyone's report, please don't misunderstand me, but it's not misconduct in the sense that everyone was trying to do what they were trying to do, and it's difficult for us to walk in their shoes, and particularly, as you said at the outset, with limiting ourselves from the hindsight bias. And so really the benefit and the practicality that arises from the inquiry is how do we do things better going forward, and that will require of some architecture and structure.
But how would that not be achieved through the exchange of written submissions, particularly if council, as Mr. Smart indicated, were willing to collaborate perhaps on a set of agreed recommendations beforehand?
I understand that, but there's a reason why the adversarial system has survived, and that is because of the exchange that's afforded by the bench saying, well, I'm troubled, excuse me, I'm troubled by this, what do you say about that? Or how do we practically deal with that, with the experience of the people standing behind you, giving instructions? How does that work in reality? Because, as I said, the difficult challenge that we have as advocates, but also as a commission standing in a position where they can make recommendations, is how does this practically work on the ground? And in my respectful submission, by having the exchange of written submissions, it'll illuminate some of the area of the joinder of issue, and it'll also illuminate some of the area of considered outcome, but there's practicality and there's architecture that needs to be put in place. In my submission, the better way of doing it is having a discussion.
Thank you, I understand your point. Ms. Sullivan.
Really, in your hands, Commissioner, beyond making a response that is necessary, I think, in relation to the third point in Mr. Smart's submissions, the concern is raised that to date in this inquiry the public has really heard only one perspective, and it's an unfortunate position to take in circumstances where the Commissioner has the opportunity to ask questions of witnesses. If there was a perspective beyond what I sought to elicit from witnesses, if there was a further perspective that was required, then I understood that to be his mandate. So I am somewhat perplexed by that, if I may put it in those terms.
I think it's not my job to make speeches, not my job to make an opening address, and the perspective that was put was a 30-minute opening address about the facts, and I haven't put that because I haven't had the opportunity to put it. That's what it's a reference to.
Thanks, Mr. Smart.
Well, an opening is, of course, necessarily a preliminary overview of facts as they stand at a certain point in time. And the inquiry's had the benefit of 9 witnesses to further flesh out the factual matrix since that time. and those matters will be the subject of submissions in a form that you consider appropriate, Commissioner. And beyond that, I'd simply say that I'm not sure that it's the role of this commission to formulate the architecture, as Mr Gollan puts it, in terms of the police structure, beyond identifying the systemic issues. It's really a matter for the Commissioner as to how that architecture might ultimately be structured. So I'd simply raise that matter for your consideration.
Can I clarify, Mr Smart, you also are suggesting that there should be written submissions exchanged and then an opportunity for oral submissions?
Yes. And yes, obviously the oral submissions can be appropriately limited.
Obviously, the question thank you, and you're welcome to sit. The question about how this commission deals with closing submissions is, as the Act makes clear, very much for this commission to deal with. I'm comfortable with making an order that submissions should be made public. I hadn't anticipated making that order because I didn't want to confine council, but that seems to, if the concern is about ensuring that the position both of council assisting and any responding parties is dealt with appropriately, then it seems to me that that's one simple answer to it. It is, frankly, much more helpful for me to have written submissions than to have everything dealt with orally in terms of subsequently relying on those submissions to prepare the report. So at this stage, I won't make any further order for an oral argument. I'm afraid, Mr Smart, I'm against you. I understand the Commissioner of Police has come here, as he should, cooperatively, but I don't think that doesn't require me to therefore provide him with a platform for making submissions. He's entitled to take whatever approach he wants to in terms of publicising the response to this Commission's hearing to date and or in terms of the ultimate report when it's provided. But I don't think that that's a proper use of the Commission's resources to give a platform for the Commissioner of Police to have oral submissions on that basis alone. So I suppose in that sense, points 1 and 3, I'm very much against you on those arguments. So in short, we will stick with the written submissions. If there's anything in those written submissions which I think, where I think I would benefit from oral argument, most likely on confined issues, then we can make some arrangements to hear oral argument on those confined issues. But I don't propose at this point, without having seen those written submissions and read those written submissions, to anticipate that decision. I think that's an unnecessary step to take. However, I am happy to make an order now, or you can include it in your written submissions if you want. Anyone that would like their written submissions to be published on the Commission's website, I'm very happy to do that. And if it would assist you in writing those submissions, to have potentially a public version and a supplementary confidential version if there's matters that you need to go into in more detail that can't be included in the public submissions, then that's certainly, I'm very open to that possibility as well. So I can leave that decision with you. You can indicate in your written submissions when you provide them whether you wish them to be included in public, whether you wish them to be posted on the Commission's website. I think we will wait and for all the submissions to come in before we upload them as a bundle rather than in the piecemeal fashion. And if there's anything that you wish to say confidentially, you're welcome to do so. If any of the parties would prefer that their submissions not be included in a public on the Commission's website, then I would agree to that request, because fundamentally the purpose of the submissions is to allow me to reach a procedurally fair and informed view about the matters that I should include in the report. Was there anything else from that, Ms Sullivan?
No, nothing arising.
Anything else? We'll make sure that that message is communicated to those legal representatives who are not here today. Thank you, everyone, very much for your assistance during the
There
course.
is the matter of the suppression order in relation to the Lake Illawarra.
So
We've done that on the interim basis. We're waiting for the
I
transcript.
think we'll wait for the,
confirm.
I think the transcript will probably, let's give ourselves till tomorrow morning to have that transcript ready, and we can provide it to the parties. If there's anything that we see in that that warrants the making or the continuation of the suppression order, and otherwise we can let, if any of the media representatives want to contact our media liaison person, we can let you know what the status of that non-publication order.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Does that deal with that, Ms Sullivan? I think everyone would prefer to see the transcript rather than make a decision on the
Yes.
file. Thank you. This commission stands adjourned.